Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for African News with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, at least 4 people have been killed in a car bombing outside a police station in Nairobi. The blast goes off not far from the area known as Little Somalia, which has been targeted by extremists in the past. Also, South African peace icon Desmond Tutu warns the ruling party that it's failing to fill the shoes of its predecessor. Whilst hailing the gains the country's made in the 2 decades since the end of apartheid, Tutu expresses disappointment in the ANC. And supporters of Senegal's former president accuse the current administration of trying to prevent ABDOULAYE from returning home from Paris. After 2 years away, his plane's reportedly stuck in Morocco after being refused landing rights in Dakar. First up, I will not be voting for the ANC, says Archbishop Desmond Tutu. The South African Nobel Peace Laureate made the declaration on Wednesday as he celebrated 20 years since the end of apartheid. In Cape Town, he praised the role the ruling ANC party played in ending white minority rule, but warned that President Jacob Zuma had failed to fill the shoes of the country's first post-apartheid black leader, the late Nelson Mandela. The ANC is expected to win next month's general election, but its reputation's taken a knock from corruption allegations and ongoing poverty and social divides. Some former top ANC figures have called on voters to turn to smaller parties or spoil their ballots. Tutu said he understands their point of view.
You can't call in question the integrity of the people who have proposed this. You can't call in question, as it were, their struggle credentials. and they are saying, don't vote mindlessly. Don't be voting cattle. Think when you make that cross, and remember that it's going to decide what quality of life you have for the next 5 years.
Well, EMSIE FERREIRA is in Cape Town for us. She says that Tutu has been walking around the issue of directly speaking about the ANC, but has been pretty hard on the legacy of the country.
What we saw today was Archbishop Desmond Tutu, without directly saying so, weighing in on the no-vote debate here ahead of the May 7 elections. Now, the no-vote campaign was launched in Johannesburg a week ago by former ANC leaders. What they've done is they've called on voters to either vote for a smaller party or to deface their ballot papers and send a warning to the ruling party. It's subtly different with Tutu in that he said he will not vote for the ANC, but he's urged voters not to be voting cattle and to consider very carefully who they do vote for. This is, of course, no surprise coming from Tutu. He's a very vocal critic of the ANC in recent years, and particularly of President Jacob Zuma. And of course, a few years ago, when the Dalai Lama was refused entry into South Africa, he said he would pray for the downfall of this government. This time, what he has it against appears to be the Nkandla scandal, as is the case with the leaders of the No Vote campaign, who say it's unconscionable to spend 20 million euros on improving the president's private home. And they're saying that this means that the ANC leadership has lost its path and it's lost the moral high ground, which confirms perceptions, really, that though the ANC is bound to win this election by another landslide, it faces its toughest re-election campaign in 20 years.
Well, one of the parties contesting next month's election is the Economic Freedom Front, set up by Julius Malema, an ex-youth leader for the ANC. He's out of favour and accuses the South African public broadcaster of discriminating against opposition parties. This after it refused to run an EFF campaign message. The ad calls for people to destroy e-tolls, a controversial new road tolling system. The SABC says it hasn't banned the advert, rather it's rejected it because it allegedly incites violence. An ad from the opposition Democratic Alliance was also rejected earlier this month for allegedly launching a personal attack on President Zuma. At least 4 people have been killed in a car bombing outside a police station in Nairobi. Officers had stopped the vehicle at traffic lights and were questioning the occupants when the device went off. 2 of those killed were reportedly police. It's still not clear who was behind the attack. We're joined now for more on this by our correspondent in Nairobi, Duncan Woodside. Duncan, what more can you tell us about what happened today?
Well, at the moment, there isn't a huge amount of new information to give. We do know, as you said, that at least 4 people died when this car exploded It's open to question as to whether the car was in transit when it exploded or whether it was stationary. The police say they stopped the car. They were taking the occupants for questioning. Whether the police themselves were driving the car towards the police station from where it was stopped, we just don't know at the moment. But certainly, obviously, at least 4 people are dead and fingers of accusation already pointing towards Al-Shabaab. Al-Shabaab being a Al-Qaeda-affiliated group that originated in Somalia, but has been increasingly active here in Kenya over the last 3 or 4 years.
Now, Duncan, this must add to Kenyans' worries about the ease with which extremists seem to be able to launch attacks in the capital.
It will do, yes, of course. Nairobi has been the centre of a number of attacks against bars, restaurants and churches over the last couple of years, and also elsewhere in the country. We've seen attacks on the coast, the Kenyan coast, and in the north of the country, and these appear to be gathering momentum in response, of course, to Kenya's military campaign across the border in southern Somalia.
Thanks very much, Duncan Woodside, there for us in Nairobi. Now, officials from the party of Senegal's former president have accused Dakar of trying to stop Abdoulaye Wade's return by refusing his plane landing right. It comes 2 years after his electoral defeat and soon after his son Karim was charged with corruption in Dakar. Wade's aircraft is likely to be stuck in Morocco overnight. His supporters say it's a ploy by the current government ahead of upcoming local elections.
The government spread rumours on the radio that after President Wade arrived in Casablanca, he felt ill and returned to Paris. Obviously, it's totally false. They are trying to sabotage his return. They just want him to arrive late at night. His rallies are banned. They even wanted to close the airport, but they saw that there was a huge crowd there, waiting to greet him.
Officials say that Muslim fighters have taken control of the northern town of Buka in Central African Republic. Sectarian violence exploded in the country following a short-lived rebel takeover last year. Christian militia have been targeting Muslim civilians, and as aid workers try and move vulnerable communities to safety, the government's expressed concern that relocation goes against reconciliation efforts.
Protected closely by French soldiers, a convoy of 93 Muslims, including 35 children, left the PK-12 enclave over the past weekend. They were headed for Bambari, some 400 kilometers northeast of the capital, Bangui. Their being relocated has brought heated discussion among officials in the capital. The Minister of National Reconciliation said he was not informed of the operation.
For me, displacing people because they are Muslims is proof that we have failed. The relocation of these people was not carried out in coordination with the question of reconciliation.
Officials from the Red Cross and the International Organization of Migrations went to the ministry to explain the choice they made. In the presence of journalists, they made their position clear.
If it is necessary in order to save lives, we save lives, but we will work with the government.
But the minister says that the decision goes beyond the humanitarian issue because it raises questions about the future of the country.
If we relocate people to other regions, it's very dangerous. People should be left together.
Lack of safety is still the greatest obstacle towards returning to normal life in many districts. However, for the moment, the relocating of people has been suspended.
Well, that wraps up African News for me. I'll be back with more tomorrow, though. Join us then if you can. Take care.